Today's video is sponsored by that juicy fat subscribe button. Look how elegant that thing looks. Don't you want a little hit of that? Kendrick just had the most viewed Super Bowl halftime performance of all time. This needs to be the most subscribed Rapaholics video of all time. Oh, and of course hit the like if you want to keep seeing me destroy Drake on the mic. Now, Lawbreeds and Gentlegrams, we got some things to get into today because the propaganda machine is in full effect. The defamation drizzy defenders heard Kendrick loud and clear when he rapped platinum, platinum, platinum. Gotta look at yourself and ask what happened. How y'all let a conscious guy go commercial while only making conscious albums? How y'all let the braids on TV? How y'all let the hood at the table? Now y'all don't even know how to rate him. People looking like I'm a creative player. Then years later, he literally became a creative player on the Super Bowl stage, playing the Great American Game and rapped an unreleased track saying, "Remember I said I'm the greatest back when you debated number 1 and number 2? Topic was always hilarious to me. You brought him right to me. I brung out the broom." And now the top two's toppers, the gaveling gram gobblers, the attempted Super Bowl halftime show stoppers, are doing their best to try to downplay the quality and success of Kendrick Lamar's halftime Super Bowl performance. Kai Cenat, who just the other day said that while Drake is his boy, he has to admit that Kendrick did win that battle. Now he's claiming that he was at the halftime show and the crowd was dead, and the NFL was even adding in sound effects to make it seem like the crowd was cheering during the performance when they weren't. And Drake, of course, being the king Twitter fingers, had to like a post where Kai Cenat said this.
Okay, oh my God, they add sound effects to the NFL. So right here, there was no sound. I just heard crowd sounds. All my life right here, there was no sounds. They add crowd effects? I did not know that. Kendrick Lamar came out. Word to my mother. If anybody was there, y'all knew it was. Y'all knew it. Y'all felt it. Crowd was making no noise. This is me being honest. I was there. The loudest times that they made, the loudest time that the crowds did was, I think, him being shown for the first time, SZA, Samuel Jackson being shown for the first time, and then They Not Like Us.
So Drake, if you're watching, I just want to show you a different angle of the Super Bowl with the crowd cheering the only line that probably mattered to you. And then, of course, you had the King Big Mac Akademiks, the Grimace Shake Graham Gobbler, who tried to blame Kendrick fans for the public backlash he faced for his inappropriate Discord convos with a 15-year-old boy. Now he's doing everything he could to downplay the quality of Kendrick's halftime performance, saying that the stage made Kendrick look small, and that for Kendrick fans, it's never about the numbers unless the product is trash, then they use numbers to defend it.
That stage made Kendrick look mighty small, if you ask me. Now, we'll get to the ratings and everything, because here's the thing with Kendrick fans, too. It ain't never about numbers till it's trash. It's all about numbers. Can't win. It's catch-22, them off.
Now, this logic is the result of someone eating one too many Big Macs and their brain falling down a deep vortex into lethargic mode. Because, let me clarify something, alright? First of all, it was very clear, if you couldn't already tell, that this performance was not meant for the mainstream. They didn't play the hits on purpose. Kendrick prioritized storytelling, puzzle solving, competition, and authenticity, rather than the typical nostalgia and over-the-top production that you'd see from most halftime shows. Now, because of that, the sacrifice was most of the audience likely didn't know a lot of the songs he performed. And because it was a bar-focused performance, it's much harder for the crowd to sing along to, especially when they don't know a lot of these tracks. Kendrick fans start playing the numbers game when Drake fans jump in the mix to trash the performance due to Kendrick's unwillingness to conform, and using dumb arguments like, "Kendrick looked mighty small on that stage," or, but I didn't hear the crowd singing though. If that's your argument, then of course we're going to come in with the numbers, because that's going to directly reflect the impact that this performance had. We're going to break down all the records that Kendrick broke with this performance, how staying authentic led to him having a halftime show that people are still talking about days later, more discussion than we've seen with almost any other halftime show in history, and the numbers are simply used as a device to showcase the magnitude of the impact and dismiss the dumb argument of this being a lackluster performance that most Drake fans have tried to emphasize online. So firstly, the day of the Super Bowl, before it actually happened, Kendrick was less than 500,000 listeners away from breaking the all-time record for most monthly listeners for a hip-hop artist in Spotify history. Doing so, he would obviously surpass Drake, which is substantial not because they were in a battle together, but because Drake has 3 times the amount of songs as Kendrick and is obviously known as the numbers guy. That's the number one thing Drake fans go to defend his legacy and impact, is the fact that he's got the most hits, the most streams, the most plaques, etc. So for Kendrick to become the most listened to rapper on Spotify of all time would just emphasize that bar even more of how you let a conscious guy go commercial while still only making conscious albums. Now, once Kendrick's performance was posted on YouTube, it took less than a day for his performance to get as many views as Usher's performance last year, which was obviously released 12 months ago. So to anyone telling you this performance is whack, ask them how it already got more views than last year's performance in just one day alone. And in just 2 days, Kendrick has almost beaten The Weeknd's halftime performance in views, which was already 4 years ago, as The Weeknd's performance from 4 years ago has 68 million views, while Kendrick's halftime performance from 3 days ago has 48 million views. It was also announced that his halftime show had broken the record for the most watched halftime performance in history, with a reported 133.5 million people watching specifically the halftime show. What is it, the bots? What is it, the braids? I don't know, but of course Drake fans tried to rebuttal that. We'll get to that shortly. But before we do, the day that the Super Bowl aired, Kendrick broke another record as the song Not Like Us shot up to the #1 spot on the Spotify global charts with over 11 million streams, and this became the biggest streaming day ever for a rap song outside of its opening week. And what's funny is Kendrick here broke his own record because the rapper who has the biggest streaming day of all time is also Not Like Us by Kendrick in its opening week. Aside from that, the NFL division of the New York Times, called The Athletic, had rated Kendrick's halftime performance as the 4th best halftime show of all time. I don't know how valid this list is because they did have Michael Jackson at number 6. I don't know if you could do the GOAT like that, but their list goes Rihanna's performance at number 10. At number 9 is Madonna, Nicki Minaj, MIA, LMFAO, and CeeLo Green. On a side note, I kind of remember this performance. This was way back when, choosing a rapper to perform at the halftime show was like so far away from the realm of possibilities for the NFL. So it was kind of interesting at the time that they chose to bring out Nicki Minaj and LMFAO. One of the guys from LMFAO is actually a professional tennis player now. There's no more party rocking. But anyways, at number 7 is a tie between the following two performances. Number 1 was Shakira, Bad Bunny, and J-Lo, and then Bruno Mars and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And on another side note, you also got to give credit to Kendrick in the fact that most of these performances are a bunch of massive artists grouped together. Like you had Bruno Mars and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You had Madonna with Nicki Minaj, LMFAO, and CeeLo Green. Kendrick did it basically by himself except for, 2 hooks with SZA. And he chose to opt out of the hits and replace them with a lot of the album cuts and even some unreleased music. And it still became the most viewed Super Bowl halftime show of all time. But anyways, at number 6, again, they had Michael Jackson. At number 5, they had Beyonce and Destiny's Child. Number 4 was Kendrick Lamar. Number 3 was U2. Number 2 was Dr. Dre, 50, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick, Mary J. Blige, and Eminem. And at number 1 was Prince. Let me know in the comments how you guys would rate the best Super Bowl halftime shows. After the show, Dave Free, the co-founder of PG Lang with Kendrick Lamar, Kendrick's childhood friend, the guy that Drake said had a baby with Kendrick's fiance, he's really the visionary behind a lot of the set designs, music videos, and anything visual that Kendrick does, or anyone from PG Lang. And they designed Kendrick's whole halftime performance. It was Kendrick, Dave Free, and the rest of the PG Lang team. No one from the outside, but Dave did an interview after and said this performance, again, wasn't about playing the hits. Now, as for the impact of this performance, obviously, again, it might have not been Kendrick's target audience, but it definitely drew a lot of new eyeballs onto him because after the show, a bunch of his songs shot up on the charts, and for this week's Hot 100, Kendrick is actually battling himself for the number 1 spot. It's either going to be Not Like Us or Luther with SZA. They're both challenging for that number 1 position. Him and SZA have also been occupying the entire top 6 of the Spotify charts since this halftime performance aired. Ironically, there was another classic song that made its way back onto the Spotify charts. One of the songs that started it all, Drake and Kendrick's collab, Poetic Justice from Good Kid, Mad City, racking up 443,000 streams on the day after the Super Bowl, over 10 years after its initial release. That's the song's biggest streaming day ever, so you want to talk about a Drake stimulus package, I think you got to change that to a K-Dot stimmy. And speaking of Drake, shout out to Hello Yassine. He's another YouTube yapper, and that's not an insult in any way. I call myself, anyone who does these YouTube videos, we're just all a bunch of YouTube yappers. But make sure you hit that juicy subscribe button. Don't forget. But Hello Yassine on Twitter emphasized something interesting in that the only reason Drake ever stopped going in on Meek Mill during their beef was because he got locked up. So, to anyone saying that Kendrick has been milking this whole moment because he did the music video, the pop out, now he's doing the Super Bowl, Yassine makes an important point in that if Meek Mill didn't become a sympathetic figure for hip hop due to his corrupt judge, Drake would still be performing back to back. But he corrected himself by saying this was completely wrong. Drake retired back to back On January 1st, 2017, Meek Mill got arrested for the wheelie on August 18th, 2017, so Drake did a 17-month run of that back-to-back song, meaning that Kendrick still has 8 more months of this, if he wants to be as petty as Drake. And Drake was definitely petty, if you guys don't remember. He had that Summer 16 tour, it was all about revenge. He dropped the Summer 16 song talking about, playing back-to-back in a Toronto hotel room that Nicki Minaj and Meek Mill were staying in. He was performing that song at every stop of his tour out in Philly. He performed it at the OVO Fest, flashing memes of Meek Mill all across the screen. So don't be mad at Kendrick taunting Drake, just doing it on a much higher level. Drake did and would be doing the exact same thing had he won this beef. But let's keep moving on. So you guys remember the day of the Super Bowl, Kendrick was just 500,000 monthly listeners away from breaking Drake's record and any rapper's record of having the most monthly listeners on Spotify of any hip-hop artist of all time. Well, the day after the Super Bowl, Kendrick officially broke the record for most monthly listeners ever for a rapper in Spotify history with 88.9 million monthly listeners, and he gained 2.5 new listeners in just one day alone after the Super Bowl. Again, emphasizing that this performance might have not been conventional, that audience might not have known a lot of Kendrick's songs, but it left an impact because they went home and listened. Now again, remember how I stated that the NFL and Roc Nation had announced that Kendrick was the most viewed halftime performance of all time with around 133 million listeners or viewers? Well, a bunch of Drake fans went back onto Roc Nation's page and they found that last year, Roc Nation had announced that Usher was the most viewed halftime performance ever with 202 million viewers. So last year, Usher was the most viewed with over 200 million, but this year, Kendrick's the most viewed of all time with only 133 million. Where's that 70 million discrepancy coming from? Well, shout out to this Twitter user by the name of Gotham Hip Hop. He kind of cleared this all up, saying, in case you're confused, the reason why last year's numbers were 200 plus million, it was because they counted viewership outside of the home, which boosted numbers. Fox Sports, who aired this year's Super Bowl, is officially saying this was the most watched Super Bowl ever. Case closed. And he shared screenshots which said, according to Fox Sports, an average of 126 million viewers tuned in to watch their broadcast on Sunday, February 9th, which saw the Philadelphia Eagles emerge victorious over the Kansas City Chiefs. That number is a 2% increase from the 123.7 million viewers who watched last year's event, which outshone any audience previously recorded by Nielsen. Fox also noted that their peak audience of 135.7 million viewers occurred around the game's second quarter between 8 to 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time, which was right around the time that Kendrick got on stage to do the halftime show, meaning that right when the halftime show started was when the most viewers were actually watching the Super Bowl. And so last year, to clarify why they reported basically an extra 70 million people watching the Super Bowl with over 200 million and this year only around 130 million, it's because last year's figures may have also been helped by the fact that Nielsen had changed the way it counts people watching out of their own homes, for example, with friends or family or in bars. Basically, they artificially boosted the numbers last year. So, most viewed halftime performance of all time, already beating out last year's performance in YouTube views. I think it's debunked that Kendrick hadn't lived up to the hype. But he might keep raining on Drake's parade because if you guys didn't know, Drake is about to drop a new album with Party Next Door on February 14th, and Glasses Malone, who has been around Kendrick since very early on in his career. Kendrick even shouted Glasses out during his Grammy accepted speech for Not Like Us. Glasses tweeted out Drake and Party Next Door's new album cover with a bunch of little Kendrick pictures photoshopped in the cover and said, "Beware of the ghost demon, Valentine's Day massacre," possibly hinting that new K-Dot music is on the way on the same day that Drake and Party Next Door are going to release their album, which would be absolutely insane if he stomps on Drake's release date. And aside from that, Kendrick is also reported to do the title track for the new Captain America movie, which drops also on Valentine's Day, February 14th. The same day that Drake and Party are dropping their album. It's very likely we get Kendrick music on that same day, which would be nuts. Putting them head to head for a sales battle on the same day, almost as legendary as when Family Matters went up against Not Like Us, as they were both released basically in the same 24 hours. But speaking of numbers, it doesn't stop there. Kendrick continued dominating the charts after the Super Bowl to degrees we've never seen from a rapper or halftime performer in history, as on the first day after the Super Bowl, he had 15 songs charting on the global Spotify charts, Not Like Us being the highest with 11 million streams that day. then Luther with 9 million, TV Off with 6.55 million. You had every song from his set list aside from Man at the Garden and DNA on the charts. Even random songs like Pride off of Damn from 2017 found their way back on the charts. And again, more proof that it was the most watched Super Bowl halftime performance in history. Fox Sports tweeted it out themselves. They reported that that was up 3% from the 129.3 million viewers that Usher garnered from his halftime performance. And Kendrick pulled another extremely calculated move because he made vinyls for his GNX album that was released in November, but he only shipped them out the week of the Super Bowl. So they're all getting shipped out now, meaning they're all going to count for sales on this week's chart, which means that GNX is set to return to number 1 on Billboard this week with over 230,000 units sold, over 130,000 of those units coming from the physical sales, meaning the vinyls and CDs that he shipped this week, and then the 100,000 coming from the streams, meaning that the Super Bowl boosted the streams of GNX this week by about 70%, and it also boosted the sales of Good Kid, Mad City and Damn because they're also shooting up to the top 10 of next week's chart with about 30,000 sold each. Don't forget, these are albums that are 7 and 12 years old. So let's go through all the different records Kendrick has broke in the last 12 months, because you could definitely make the argument that this is one of the, if not the greatest year for a rapper in history. From a success perspective, impact, numbers, every angle you want to look at it. So firstly, he has the rap song with the most Grammy wins ever, 5 times for Not Like Us, the most watched Super Bowl halftime show ever, the record for rapper with the most all-time Spotify monthly listeners, 88.8 million, the most streamed diss track of all time, Not Like Us with 1 billion streams, first rap song to sell over 20 million units with Humble, and will become the first double diamond rap song ever once it's certified by the RAA. So even with all those Drake hits, God's Plan, Passion Fruit, whatever, Kendrick will still beat him to become the first rapper with a song that has sold over 20 million units. He also broke the record for fastest song to reach 500 million streams on Spotify in 70 days with Not Like Us. First rap song to ever debut at number 1 with a shortened tracking week. Most song streams in a week for any rapper with 81.2 million. Of course, Pusha T, the second biggest Drake hater and Kendrick's biggest cheerleader, had to congratulate Kendrick on all the success. And if you guys were curious about the other rappers with the highest all-time peaks of monthly listeners in Spotify history, it goes Kendrick at number 1, then Drake, then Eminem, Kanye, Doja Cat, Travis, 21 Savage, Nicki Minaj, Future, Metro Boomin, and you could see the list. And if you want some real poetic justice, Drake's top song on Apple Music right now happens to be Poetic Justice. Also, everyone was making fun of the jeans that Kendrick was wearing on the Super Bowl stage. I think they might have been women's jeans, but regardless of what they were from the brand Celine, and the searches on Google for that brand are up 3,600% since the Super Bowl. Searches for Crip Walk on Google are up 1,000% since the Super Bowl, and Kendrick himself had 10 million searches on Google since the Super Bowl. All of his albums are also at the top of the Spotify charts for most daily streams. GNX is getting 30 million streams every single day after the Super Bowl. Damn is getting around 10 million per day. Again, that was released in 2017. Then you had Doechii and Tyler, the Creator's albums, which, shout out to Doechii, man. Like, I think her album sold 11,000 copies in the first week. Now it's getting over 9 million streams every single day, over 4 months after its release. Her come up is crazy. You also had Good Kid, Mad City here. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is getting more streamed than any Drake album on a daily basis right now. So yeah, just to put things in perspective here. Kendrick's also currently expected to occupy the top 3 spots on Billboard next week, with Not Like Us at number 1, Luther at number 2, TV Off at number 3, and he's predicted to have 5 total songs in the top 10. And the day after he became the rapper with the most monthly listeners on Spotify in history with 88.8 million monthly listeners, he broke his own record and surpassed 90 million monthly listeners on Tuesday, obviously becoming the first rapper to ever hit 90 million monthly listeners. Not Like Us on Tuesday also shot up about 14%, meaning it's getting streamed more and more with 12.535 million streams that day. You guys let me know the validity to this. I saw this online, it could be cap, but it says that Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl show was America's most watched event since the moon landing. But Big Akademiks is going to say that that Super Bowl stage made Kendrick look short. Also, Not Like Us today is getting streamed more than it was when it was first released back in May. Its highest streaming day ever was 12.809 million plays on May 10th. So Tuesday marked its second highest streaming day of all time, almost a year later. And this is a really interesting tweet from the user birdie_raven7. They said, I think Kendrick refusing to conform and leaving people confused with his Super Bowl halftime show might be the most brilliant thing he's ever done. The buzz around it is crazy. I've seen so many videos of people, especially white folks, discovering him for the first time and doing deep dives into his performance. PG Lang definitely knew what they were doing. And they show that Kendrick Lamar was the most discovered artist in 24 hours in the US ever, and now the most discovered artist in a single minute in the US ever as well. Kendrick's also the only artist of 2025 to have multiple songs receive over 10 million streams in the same day on Spotify, with Not Like Us at 12.5 million streams and Luther with 10 million streams. Punch from TDE also emphasized Kendrick's choice of omitting the hits at his performance, saying that seeing all the commentary surrounding the Super Bowl performance, it's showing that we lost sight of what we've always fought for, to be who we are as artists of hip-hop culture. Since when did we want to fit in with the mainstream? Sure, we want the mainstream platforms, but only to do us, authentically us. That's what's always made hip-hop so appealing. And that's why I bring up all these numbers, right? It's not to show like, oh, Kendrick's so successful. It's to show Kendrick is so successful by doing things his way. No matter how much criticism this performance got, it was arguably the most polarizing halftime show of all time. Kendrick doing him authentically, leaving a message, telling a story, and you could see the rest of America playing catch up because they're now digging into his music more than ever. All those album cuts he played, all those unreleased songs he played, all those bars he was rapping, omitting all those hooks, it paid off because he put hip-hop at the forefront, and now he's bringing real hip-hop to the top of the charts. Ironically, his halftime performance has also surpassed Drake's Family Matters music video in views on YouTube in just less than 2 days. So I think it's fair to say the numbers speak for themselves. This show won't be remembered for the hits, the flashing lights, the dancing, the vocal performances, but this is going to open a door for hip-hop to be taken places and be put on stages much larger than we've really ever seen in history. 133 million people watching Kendrick say peekaboo. That's what we witnessed here. There's a reason Drake filed this lawsuit to stop Kendrick from performing Not Like Us on this type of stage. He knew Kendrick wouldn't just perform the song and go on with his day. He would make the entire thing a big theatrical performance. We'll be dissecting this performance for years to come. Like he said, they tried to rig the game, they can't fake influence. I love seeing hip-hop get this type of success, but let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you in the next one.